Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening depending on where you are in this amazing world. My name is Donovan Jolly and welcome everybody once again for another video of DIY investing. We have still yet to get very much confirmation as far as what direction Bitcoin's going to move. We still don't know whether we're about to drop to new lows or whether we're actually going to be swinging up into more resistance. So today I wanted to go through and explain some more long-term analysis with Bitcoin, and then I wanted to also dive into some bullish and bearish scenarios, not only with Bitcoin, but with XRP as well. There is a major stock indice that has performed exactly like Bitcoin, and if you would have known this, you would not have been so scared with the recent decline. Understanding these charts is what's going to put us all ahead of the rest of the market, because it's in times of the most uncertainty that the best traders stick to that long-term perspective. Make sure you guys stay to the end of this video, because all of these charts that are going to be covered today are going to explain exactly what's taking place with Bitcoin on a short-term as well as a long-term basis. My goal for this video is 1,000 likes, so make sure you guys smash up that like button and then hit the subscribe button, click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos like the one provided for you here. With all of this crazy price action we're seeing in the market, it's really important that we can join an amazing Discord community that we can trust. I highly recommend that you guys check mine out. We have over 4,000 members and it's growing very rapidly. So if you're looking for some top quality crypto conversation, I highly recommend that you guys join this by clicking the invitation link in the description of this video. Once you guys have access, I also offer some of my more exclusive content through my Discord, like the video course and signals. The video course is 20 educational videos that teach you guys all of the same strategies that I use to profit inside of cryptocurrency every day. It's a mix of all of the different tools that I use when it comes to doing my TA and actually profiting alongside the market. So if you're looking to actually educate yourself on the tools needed to be profitable inside of this space, I highly recommend that you guys check that out. Now, the signals are actually a way for you guys to copy my personal portfolio. Now, my long-term portfolio is really my pride and joy for this next cycle. It's my favorite altcoin picks heading into this next cycle. So my signals are actually a way for you guys to copy all of my long-term holds and know exact percentages of what I'm holding, as well as when I'm taking those profits for those cryptos. So if this is something that interests you guys, check this Discord out. Like I said, the invitation link is in the description of this video. Once you guys have access, shoot me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. With all that being said, I know everybody's really dying to see an XRP chart along with some more Bitcoin analysis. So let's quit messing around and jump right into this video today. So to start off this video, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin on the log scale. We're going to be looking at the long-term prospect of that, and then we're going to be comparing it to the Nasdaq. Now, once we're actually done with that, we're going to be jumping into some XRP analysis. Now, I wanted to talk about Bitcoin first and foremost because I know a lot of people are very scared with what's recently happened with this trend line that's been broken. Now, I believe that this is really the shakeout that we needed to see because everybody was kind of watching this trend line, and now that we've broke it, I watched a major sentiment shift happen in the market where people that were wanting to buy up here, now that the market's actually corrected, are not actually willing to buy. A lot of people in my Discord said that they were selling and they were going to rebuy back lower, which maybe some of you guys will be able to trade it effectively enough like that. But for the vast majority, what I foresee happening is roughly the same sort of things that happened in the last cycle. Basically, people will panic sell at the bottom, and then they will say, I'm going to cut my losses short, and then I'm going to wait and rebuy the dip, only they don't really have a thorough plan, and they never end up rebuying the dip, and then the crypto actually ends up bouncing 40% on the upside, and then they end up actually buying into resistance before it drops again. And so this is oftentimes just the way that it happens, but I want to talk about some things today to kind of give everybody that's here focused on the long-term prospect of crypto kind of some more analysis to go off of. Now, what we're seeing in Bitcoin today is a little bit more of a sell-off coming. I expected this based off of the volume profile and just based off of how price structure looked. I expected on a short-term time frame we were actually going to dip a little bit. And so even though with us kind of falling back down in the shorter time frame, I'm still long-term bullish because I don't really think a whole lot has changed as far as that respect goes. Now, we can drop down a little bit lower and still maintain bullish market structure. So I will get into these little shorter time frame analysis, but you guys are going to have to bear with me for a second because I want to share with you something that I feel is way more important than any of what's going to be given on the short time. Now, looking here, this is the Nasdaq Composite Index. Now, this is basically just one of the indices for the stock market. Now, this is an average of all of the biggest companies on the Nasdaq. And so it's just a big indice for us to kind of base off of. Like the Dow Jones is just another indice. This is kind of one that we can look at because this shows almost like the total market cap of crypto. This shows a big conglomerate of different big stocks inside of the market. Now, by looking at this, I wanted to share with you guys a pattern that's played out in the Nasdaq that looks almost identical to Bitcoin. Now, you guys are actually going to know this exact chart pattern because if I've ever shared with you the emotional psychology of a market or the Wall Street cheat sheet, it's actually an exact cutout of this. And in fact, that chart was made off of the Nasdaq. Now, basically what we see in the Nasdaq is the fact that we held this trend line for about 40 years. This was a 40-year trend line where we saw higher highs and higher lows until finally in 2008, we actually sold through that trend line. Guys, this was a 40-year trend line that we sold through. I can guarantee in this exact moment here, all of the retail investors, all of the people that had been investing previously up to this point panic sold because they immediately expected that this was going to go to new lows because obviously we had just smashed through a 40-year trend line. Why would that continue to go up? Now, this is the thing that I wanted everybody to pay attention for because this is the exact scenario that's happening in Bitcoin today. Now, keep in mind, guys, this was a 40-year trend line that sold through only to see it break out and go into new all-time highs. Now, Bitcoin, this was only about from 2015 to 2020, right? So this was about a 5-year trend line. So this was nothing even close to what we saw inside of the Nasdaq. Now, guys, this was an even longer market cycle that played out, and we sold through this only to still go into new all-time highs. And this is really why I'm still long-term bullish on Bitcoin, is because of the fact, even though we had this long-term trend line, you guys already know that from some of my last analysis that I left you guys with, this is something that happens every capitulation cycle of the Bitcoin trend. The only way we start the new parabolic advance is if we break through the previous trend line that held us to support. And I think that this was exactly that. We just kind of consolidated on this trend line a little bit longer than the previous cycles, right? And so this is actually what I'm watching out for with Bitcoin. It's crazy to me that we're following so closely to previous cycles. Even though the cycles might look a little bit different, they're still roughly the same. Now, let's go through here and kind of delete these drawing tools, and let's go through and analyze some things that I'm seeing here inside of the Nasdaq today. We're going to drop it to a weekly time scale so it's a little bit easier to follow off of. Now, I believe that this is going to be one of the best guidelines that we can really follow heading into this next cycle because Bitcoin actually follows a lot of correlations between the Nasdaq. Now, let's go through here. Let's pull up the regular Bitcoin chart here. Now, what I wanted to share with you guys today is just how correlated the two cycles are. And I do believe that we're going to continue to see correlations between the two cycles. Now, let's go through here and kind of analyze what I mean. Now, you get the same sort of blow off top, just like the Nasdaq, and then you even start a very similar downtrend as well. And I'll share with you guys kind of what I mean. So, you get the top of the cycle here. We make our first lower high. We find support down here at the bottom of this wick, and then we get rejected. This is our first lower high in that cycle. So this is the first lower high in the cycle, and then we drop down to this 6K support floor. Now, this is where it starts to get very similar. Now, what I've noticed is the fact that both of these cycles are very, very correlated. Now, kind of what you see is the same sort of pattern here. You get the top of the cycle, we sell off, make our first support of the lower high, bounce, reject at the resistance at the top of the lower high, and then we kind of drop back down here. Now we get these two attempts at support only to make lower highs, and then right here you kind of get this little rounded bottom formation, right? Now when I go through here, it'll look very similar to the Nasdaq, but there will be some differences. So we get the top of the cycle high, we sell off, we find support here. This is really the first bottom. So we'll label that one green, kind of make an attempt to recapture those highs when we get rejected here. Label this one orange. And then you get roughly the same sort of pattern here that falls. We fall to new lows, we get these two attempts at support, two rejections, and then we get this round that takes place right here, right? It's very, very similar to what took place here in Bitcoin. Now, this is where the two cycles are going to differentiate itself. Now, what happened in the Nasdaq was actually that we actually went for a higher high, sold off, and this was kind of like a higher high, double bottom, a one wave, and then we went into the new cycle, right? Bitcoin is following a very similar trajectory. The only real difference here is the fact that instead of making a higher high right here, we sold to new lows, but we still ended up getting that same higher high. It just kind of came at a different point. Now, this to me is still very similar market structure. We bounced, and then we had an immediate sell-off that took us all the way back down to these lower levels from the bottom of the cycle. And this looks to me like the same sort of market structure. Obviously, no two cycles are ever going to look exactly the same. But to me, the fact that we are seeing such a correlated significant... So to me, the fact we're seeing it correlated so significantly makes me feel like we're only going to continue to see that kind of play out. Now, to me, guys, the fact we are at these lower support levels, I don't think that we're going to experience a whole lot more downside. It is still very possible, and I've told you guys that we could still come back down and retest these wicks down here. You guys got to remember that from the capitulation down here at $3,100 to the top of 14K, this is still a higher high. And that's the thing. I mean, even if we go back to the last bull cycle back in the day, we go back down in here, you guys know that we had this entire last bull cycle from $1,100. We retraced down to here. And then from right here, these were the first higher highs that we had on this trend. I mean, honestly, even with this first higher high, a lot of people would have said this isn't a confirmed bull market. We haven't broken all-time highs yet. This is just one little impulse. And guys, what we saw from 3,200 all the way up to 14K was an even bigger impulse. Yes, we are correcting a lot harder than the last cycle, but it's still just a big higher high, in my opinion. And so that's why I don't really feel like there's a big reason to be shaken out. Yes, we broke from the long-term downtrend, but I've shared with you guys analysis that shows that this is what happens every single time. And now we're getting such correlated Now that we're getting such correlated price structure between the Nasdaq and Bitcoin, it only makes me feel more confident in the longevity of crypto, specifically Bitcoin. And so really, guys, what I'm watching for, let's drop it to a shorter time frame before we jump into our XRP analysis. To me, what I'm seeing currently looks a little bit more like bearish market structure. That's just what I see from personal first glance. Let's go throw up some volume here. Now, really, this is a big nasty rejection that we see here. We see a pump, then it immediately retraces. We can see that we have declining volume. We did have a little bit of a volume outbreak that came in right here, but the fact that we're immediately selling off from that doesn't mean that I think it holds very much strength. Realistically, we've maintained resistance below this. We did kind of temporarily pierce below that, but for me, I'm not really thinking that this is major bullish. Now, from horizontal support and resistance, I have some shorts that are opened up to here. Interested areas to be longing would obviously be like the bottom of this wick down here. I'm trading on Coinbase, and then potentially right here. That's kind of what I would be watching for. I'd probably throw one more at about right here. But if I was looking to long an area, this would probably be the areas that I'd be longing. This would be the area that I'd want to short. But for me, guys, there's a lot of volatility on these shorter time frames, and so especially with how big of a reaction we just got in Bitcoin, really, now's not really the time where I'm trying to be looking to channel trade, because I just feel like it's less probable, but because I just feel like there's way too much volatility right now. But with that being said, guys, what we did see was a lot of capitulation volume that came into the bottom of that dip. I actually did see a chart on Twitter. I wish I could find it because I would share it with you guys for this video, but I haven't been able to find it. But basically, what we saw, I saw somebody post an indicator that showed the amount of spot entries versus the amount of leveraged entries in the market, and it shows you the volume. Now, what happened right here with this sell volume during this bottom that we saw at about 5K that we're at right now, when we hit this low, we had the most amount of spot orders in history in Bitcoin. Now, what spot means is basically just market buying, people getting filled with their entries and their bids, and that's just like getting market bought, basically. And so we had the biggest amount of spot buy orders that took place during this dip. That means more people added to their long terms, more people were willing to just market buy Bitcoin, more people were filling their bids down here than ever before. That's a really good sign, guys, and that's why I don't think that it's very logical to think that we're headed for new lows. I think that it is possible, but there's some very big support levels that we have to break before we can necessarily think that. Because from what I found, when everybody starts calling for new lows, that's generally the bottom. The fact is, guys, everybody was bullish up here. Now that we've dipped, everybody's calling for new lows. And so I'm just personally going to continue to trust my analysis, and I think that the bottom is in. Now, this is my analysis that I had for Bitcoin on the short term as well as the long term. To me, it looks just like the Nasdaq. Just like the Nasdaq, it broke down from its long-term trend line. In fact, this was a 40-year trend that it actually ended up breaking down from. And so to me, I don't see the reason to be super scared. I think that this is just a correlated, I think that this is just mainly something that's happened in times past, and we don't need to be so shaken out. And I think that this is really that last shakeout that we needed for Bitcoin to actually send it into new all-time highs. So now let's actually dive into this XRP analysis so all of the XRP community knows exactly what I'm thinking for the short term as well as the long term. Now we're going to be taking a look at the dollar, and then we're going to be finishing up with the Bitcoin pair. I know I just talked about the Bitcoin pair in yesterday's video, so I'm not going to get into a ton of analysis with that. I just mainly wanted to talk to you guys about more of a bearish scenario that I did see. Now, to me, XRP for my last update, what I told you guys was that if support wasn't going to hold here at about 20 cents, I was expecting a stronger sell-off, and that's exactly what we did see for my last update. We actually ended up coming all the way down to about 10 cents on certain exchanges. I think Coinbase did dip to 10 cents. And so we've had a pretty significant sell-off. Now, really guys, what I wanted to share with you guys isn't necessarily the fractal so much, because I feel like everybody in crypto, specifically XRP community, already knows about that fractal. But what I want to talk to you guys about was the time frames, because we're having still the same correlated time frames, but in my opinion, we're actually seeing something even more correlated with the last cycle. Now, I'm going to go through here and analyze the time frames. Now with XRP, the way that they go, let's actually drop it to a 3-day time frame. Now with XRP, the way that these time frames go is at the new year, we go into these 1 and 2 year cycles. So we had the top of the first cycle back in 2015. Now 2 years from that point takes us to almost the exact bottom of the bear cycle before we go into that new bull phase. And then the cycle repeats once again. We get the top of 2018, which is the top of the bull cycle, just like back here. Same time right at that new year for some reason. And then just like the last cycle, we go through 2 years of bearish corrections, right? So 2 years takes us to here. And now we can see that from that point, we've basically made a little impulse, a bull trap, and then we've fallen to new lows. Now, what I've been updating you guys with was that I thought that the bottom was going to be in at the new year, but in fact, we bull trapped and we're now headed for new lows. But what I wanted to share with you guys is the fact that even though we have sold off, it does not change the long-term prospect with XRP by any means. Really, guys, we're still following that same sort of cycle. We get the top of the cycle, 2-year bear decline. After the 2-year decline, we start the 1-year bull cycle. Now, after that, we start the brand new cycle just like times past. Top of the bull cycle, 2 years of bearish cycle. And now this is where I really wanted to get to the point that I was trying to make. Now, if we go back in the last cycle, we're going to see that we saw roughly the same thing. We had the new year, we made this bull trap, and then we fell to new lows right before that next bull trend started. And this is actually something that I've been updating you guys with inside of this fractal, was the fact that I told you that it was very possible that if we didn't bottom at the new year, we could bull trap and actually fall to one more low, and then that would start the bull trend. And so that's what I've been watching for. Even with XRP falling a little bit lower than I expected, I continuously just added to the dip. I bought at 14 cents. When it initially started collapsing, and I bought at 12 cents. I actually missed my entries at 15 cents. For whatever reason, I didn't get filled on my exchange orders that I had placed, and so I just went on Coinbase and just market bought when it actually hit that price. Now, for me, guys, what I've kind of updated you with was the fact that I said that there was definitely potential for us to drop down to 12 cents if, in fact, we ended up selling through support at 20 cents. And that's exactly what we did. We came back down, hit 12 cents, and then we bounced. But it looks like on a shorter time frame, we're seeing a little bit more weakness. And that's why I actually gave you guys, this was about a couple months ago, I gave you guys a bearish scenario with downside targets of 6 cents. And this was really the lowest downside target that I had for XRP. Honestly, if we ended up selling through 6 cents, I think that it's more likely we're going to drop all the way back down there. And so it is still possible, as 6 cents is a target here that I have been watching. Basically, 6 cents takes us to the previous cycle high, which would be about right here. Now, I would like to see some buyers come back into the market before that 6 cents. If we start selling below 12 cents, it's going to make me very, very pessimistic towards XRP. But like I said, guys, I'm a long-term investor here, so I'm going to hold through regardless. But this is what I wanted to share with you. Really, guys, based off of the fractal itself, we're still right on track with that. Really, it looks very similar. In fact, it looks more similar than ever before. The only real difference is we've made lower lows in this trend compared to kind of higher highs in that one. But really, guys, it still looks the same to me. We have the same buyers that are entering this market, and the fractal will play out again. I'm very confident confident in saying that. It's just the fact that we're getting a little bit of an elongated correction. But really, guys, we needed capitulation to happen. Really, we haven't had a moment of capitulation until just recently with this massive sell-off. I feel like we're finally starting to get to the point where dumb money is shaken out and the retail investors are going to start selling their bags if they haven't already. So anyways, guys, this was the analysis for XRP. Now let's actually dive into the Bitcoin pair real quick so I can talk about some final thoughts with this chart. Now with XRP, kind of some things I want to talk about. What I already talked about in yesterday's video was really just the fractal market cycle that I'm seeing. For you guys that maybe missed that video, basically this entire cycle from back to here is an exact fractal of this cycle right here. It's just a little bit different, but there's really not a whole lot of difference here. If I go through here for you guys that maybe didn't watch the last video, basically what you see is the cycle high, then you fully retrace, right? Come to this low down here, label this one green, and then you make another attempt at these highs, get rejected once more, label that one red, and then you once again fully retrace, right? And this is kind of the way that this cycle worked, but the thing is, guys, this cycle here is following the same trend. Get the cycle high here, just like the last one, fully retrace, and then we get another attempt at the cycle high right here. That is the same as right here. And then we fall to new lows once again, right? And we're really just seeing the same exact cycle playing out once again. Now, to me, guys, if I go through here and remove everything, now that we're all on the same page as far as what the cycle looks like, to me, it's following so identical. I mean, right here, we see roughly the same sort of accumulation that takes place. We get this short-term descending resistance, and then we end up breaking from that only to fall to new lows. Now, to me, guys, we are seeing a very correlated cycle here. To me, this pattern looks really similar to what we saw back in the day. And then breaking out right here is roughly the same as where we're at right here. But I think that there is still potential that we could make a couple lower lows before XRP on the Bitcoin pair ends up making any sort of real move. And so if we come over here, I think that we could see something along the lines of this. Now, based off of this fractal, the very bottom was basically the bottom right here. So in that case, if this cycle, the bottom over here should be the very bottom right here. So in my opinion, we'll bottom about right in this low, which would take us all the way back down to about 1,500 Satoshis, I believe. I could be wrong. The prices on this CoinMarketCap are a little bit different. They add a zero for some reason, so it's harder to even tell what the prices are. But this is kind of what I'm watching out for with XRP. I still very easily think that we could make a lower low before we actually do bottom. If the Bitcoin pairs do go for a lower low, then that would also kind of cement my belief that we would hit the 79% Bitcoin dominance. And so there's still some possibilities to watch out for. With the Bitcoin dominance, I shared with you guys yesterday that I think that it's topping out and we're about to drop. If that's the case, then these should start breaking out immediately. But this is something that I wanted you guys to pay attention for, because this is a bear scenario that I'm watching. But realistically, to me, the dollar pair still has a little bit more downside potential, depending on how bullish we get in the short term. It's really going to depend on Bitcoin, what Bitcoin does. The second Bitcoin starts seeing some value come into it and we start bouncing, obviously the rest of the cryptos are going to do that. But for me, guys, we did fill my target of about 12 cents. If we start to kind of mess around here and reject lower, I think that 6 cents is the only realistic target that we could expect to find from there. Now with Bitcoin, I would really like to see some more buy volume come in here, but what I've been updating you guys with up to this point has just been the fact that I do think that we could still come back down a little bit lower. We could still sweep the lows set at these wicks down at 3,800. Now, kind of what I wanted to see a swing up to about 6,400 and kind of see what we're going to do there. If we get rejected, I wanted to see us fall back down to these wicks down at about 38. And then from there, I figured we were going to get the confirmed bottom, if that was actually going to be the bottom, or we were going to fall to new lows. And so that's continuously going to be what I'm watching for. Basically, what can happen here is instead of bouncing up into resistance, we can just kind of fall back down to these new these lows that we set about $3,800, and we could see something like this, and then bounce into resistance. I don't know how it's going to play out, but that's kind of what I'm personally going to be watching for. To me, I don't think you can go wrong setting some low bids of about $3,800, trying to catch some of these low wicks. Anything below $4,500 Bitcoin, really anything below 5K Bitcoin, is a really good buying opportunity, and I'm going to do whatever I can to kind of get some extra cash going to buy this dip. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this video. I want to talk about some things with Bitcoin, some long-term approach as well as the short-term. I want to talk about the Bitcoin pair with XRP as well as the dollar pair. I still think that we're very much on track. And with XRP, to me, I think that we're just doing this scenario right here, where just in the last cycle, we bull trapped and fell into a new low. And then that was right before we actually started that next bull run. And so really, guys, we're following this same fractal very closely. It's still very identical. We're just going to have to watch and see what Bitcoin does, because really Bitcoin is going to be the driver of value. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you found any value in this, always remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos like the one provided for you here. Make sure you guys check out my Discord server. It's free to join. All you guys got to do is click in the description of this video. There you're going to get the invite link. Once you guys have access, you guys can actually message me if you want access to some of the more exclusive content that I offer in the Discord. So like I said, just message me on there and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next video. As always, peace out.